Well, that's interesting.
Oh.
StreamYard's having all kinds of fun malfunctions today.
The music was set in a nice mood, then it just stopped. Oh no.
Yeah. So I dig that music. I have that set up for my intermission clip, and there's also a show starter that does the thing too. But I have to do it manually. Like I have to turn the music on and then loop the video, and then figure out how to unclick both at the same time. But then it started to double play for me, and I'm like, this is. We're having an adventure, folks. I made us a nice pretty banner. I got to scroll back up to find it. It's lovely, but I can't get us in the vertical alignment that I normally do, so it's in the way. So fuck it.
It does look good though.
You know, we do what we can. It just doesn't. The technology doesn't always play nice with us. Oh, what the hell day is this? Is this Tuesday? Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, folks.
Woohoo! Let's
Cheers.
have some tacos.
Yeah. So, as you may have guessed, we have gathered the usual suspects. Niddy and Eric are joining me once again for some fun with demon stuff because Gazelam has been putting together a Grimoire. Did I pronounce it right? I probably didn't pronounce
That
it
was
right.
Grimoire.
It could be.
Yeah,
It could be.
Grimoire.
It's French.
It's definitely Grimoire.
It's just grim. Who knows?
A Grimoire.
Yeah.
I guess it stems the root word. It stems for a grammar, so that's why it's like that.
Okay. Yeah, it's just dark and moody and things, but
A dark grammar.
yeah. Before we get started, how are you folks today?
Doing all right. Can't complain.
Yeah, I'm doing good, all things considered. It's been a crazy few weeks, but I'm here. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you've been distracted by life and things.
Yeah, I have a like a cottage remodeling project that I've been doing, and I've been doing a lot of the work myself because I'm a cheap ass. But yeah, kind of moving forward with that, and hopefully gonna have that done here pretty soon. I'll be back to my regular, calm life doing YouTube stuff and complaining online. So yeah.
Yee. Alrighty. Now, how's you doing, Gazelam?
Oh, I don't know. I'm happy to be here. Let's say that.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll take it. That's a plus. I'm kind of low-key vamping for time while I load the photos that we need for the in the background
cool.
here.
Yeah, that makes it fun.
Yeah. So
That's a rockin' luchador mask, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, where'd you get it?
Yeah, there was this taco place in San Diego. I think it was called Lucha.
Nice.
It's right by a club called Club Blonde, and it's if you buy a mask, you get like a discount if you go in and stuff. They have
That's
a whole
cool.
wall of masks. Yeah,
Sounds like my kind of taco place.
more
yeah,
tacos.
They had vegan options too, which is always good
Yeah.
for me. So
The only merchandise I've ever gotten from a taco place, probably back when I was 8 or 9 or 10. We're talking about like 30 years ago. Taco Bell had a Rocky and Bullwinkle promotion where you bought like 50 tacos, you got a T-shirt, and I got that T-shirt and I wore it for like 20 years, and then it finally like disintegrated off my body because it was so old. Yeah, that was the coolest thing I ever got from a taco place that was wearable.
Hell yeah.
people these days don't even know what Rocky and Bullwinkle is.
I know, right? These darn
It's-
kids.
You'd think it would be in with the classics. Like there's so much stuff that my kids know about. Like the other day, my oldest was back from college. They're doing summer program stuff, so they're only back like a weekend here, a weekend there, and they're like, "So, tell me about Blade Runner. Cool, right?" I'm like, "How the hell do you know about Blade Runner?"
Blade Runner.
That's amazing.
It's the random stuff that comes up. It's
Yeah.
trippy.
Whoa.
Of course, I'm always trying to introduce them to the classics, Back to the Future and the Time Machine, the original Time Machine, and all those things.
Yeah, I have like a smattering of friends, and each one has like a gap in their pop culture knowledge. So I kind of rotate through them, and I like show each one something like this one doesn't know Back to the Future, this one didn't know Lord of the Rings, and I'm going around, I'm fixing the problems as I find them.
Yeah, you do what you can. It's hard, because you've got like so much knowledge of key cultural
Yeah.
stuff, and then the children, they find half of it on the internet, and you're like, okay, I don't know
Yeah.
what you know and don't know anymore. Although I suppose
Yeah,
it
and
makes sense. I met their mother the same way. We were at her prom actually. I was someone else's date, but she took off on me, so we're just abandoned there, and we're like talking to each other. And being the nerd that I am, I went off on Star Wars, and she was like, "I've never seen Star Wars," and I was like, "You wanna?"
Yeah.
I got some
It's
kids
not,
out
not
of
even a
it.
question. It's like, this must be fixed right now. Come with
Yep.
me.
the weird thing is that when someone watches it that never has, it would have to be a weird experience, especially the original, because for us it looked like this big high-tech epic
Yeah.
thing, but for somebody today it would probably look a little bit, I don't know,
I think, yeah,
ghetto or something.
those older movies, they definitely, like, visually, they have definitely aged. But I think the story writing, the pacing, the music, I think is far superior than most of what we have today. Like,
Yeah.
I showed my
Mhm.
friend the original Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. I
Mm.
showed him this like 10 plus years ago, and I remember watching his face when he was watching it, and just him like nodding in approval at what he was seeing, because it was just so well crafted and put together. And the visuals hold up for that particular movie. Visuals hold up really well too. But there's a lot more to it than just how it looks. It's how it feels and how it behaves and how you feel when you leave the theater. Um,
True.
yeah,
I
you can't really beat
prefer
the classics.
practical effects
Oh
anyway,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. In most cases, practical effects are the best.
Yeah.
Gen X. Ooh.
Ooh, yeah.
We get all the cool stuff.
I think I'm
we have the best movies, and then we get the cool technology too.
Yeah, I think I'm technically a millennial.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
right on that ambiguous line between Gen X and millennial.
Mhm.
Yeah, both parties disavow me and tell me I'm in the other party, so I don't know. I'm lost in the middle.
I've heard this group called Xenial, but on the other hand, the Gen Z says that they're Xenial, and the Z is just short for that. So
Yeah.
maybe we both are. I don't fucking.
Yeah.
Who cares?
And I forget how old I am. I'm so old.
Niddy, how the grok do you tell someone is a Firefly fan?
Well, actually, it's a joke. How do you know if someone's a vegan or a Firefly fan?
Oh,
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They'll tell
exactly.
I hear the same thing about atheists.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mm, I can't
Yeah.
deny it.
me too.
Firefly was good. I hear they're reviving
Oh, yeah.
that. I hear they're reviving Firefly.
I heard a
Someday.
rumor they were trying to recast, but the fan base is very divided over it.
Yeah, it's been a good 20 years since that show was released, and like Joss Whedon's kind of a pariah now because of his behaviors, and the previous cast they're all older now, and they probably don't want to return to like a small budget TV show anymore. So that's going to
It'd
be a
tricky
weird.
to do
Yeah.
if they did, because
They- they-
Serenity killed off half of them.
Yeah, that too. But they could pick up. They could pick it up. Get the right director, right writer, right crew. Yeah, get it all together.
Yeah, conceivably.
And I don't hate God, Gur. I hate the idea of God.
Well, you can't hate something that does.
Bible God's got some problems.
I hate God like I hate Darth Vader.
Yeah, something along those lines. It's
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not what we're here for, though. We're here because Gazelam has a magic book.
Yeah.
A
boy.
Grimoire.
Yes.
Well, I'm part of the Order of Amen, which is a Mormon group. We're ethnical Mormons, but we are all about the restoration of the magical principles of Mormonism, which Joseph Smith was a convicted magician, actually, for practicing magic.
That
And,
actually puts him in the same camp as Jesus.
And Jesus. So and the very first miracle that was done by Joseph Smith was an exorcism. So there he is set up with Jesus Christ as well. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been working on this grimoire, and it's the Quorum of 70 Fallen Legions of Angels and Their Keys. And so essentially I've taken different, like, more. There's a lot of Mormon stuff. Like, Mormons believe Kane is still alive and is wandering the earth, and so he's in there. There's a guy named Master Mahon. Um, there's a
Hmm.
lot of similarities with Freemasonry and with Mormonism. And they think that Master Mahon is like a code word for Master Mason because he's like this bad guy that passes the satanic keys of nefarious Freemasonry to Kane. So there's a lot of stuff we could put in a Mormon grimoire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. You would think if Kane were still around, he would have been like the head of all dark forces on Earth by this point.
Yeah.
Well,
He'd
here's the
be
catcher. Who do you think Kane is? Bigfoot.
What?
Oh my god.
They were a lot hairier back then.
Cryptid stream
I
now?
guess. Yeah, I never would
in-
guess that one.
In the lore,
So-
and there are accounts of Mormons meeting a big
God.
hairy dude and thinking he's Kane. And
If I was Kane, and I would be the oldest, wisest, most rich human on the planet. I don't think I'd be probably trouncing around in a forest getting filmed really
No.
badly.
But if you were a
yeah.
Sasquatch, how would you do that?
You can't
Put on a
die,
business
basically.
suit.
I mean,
Yeah, if that's the curse. I mean, I've heard a few different versions of Kane's curse. One was that it's what made people, pale skinned, like the Europeans, because every other variant of humanity is some shade of brown. Now, technically, we're very, very,
Yeah,
very
but-
light brown, but I've heard people say that was Kane's curse: is whoop, you're no longer brown like everybody else. You stick out. You're easy to see. That's the curse. And then Kane went up north, and Europe happened.
Well, if we're gonna hypothesize about that type of stuff with the genetics and the finding Neanderthal DNA and all the Europeans, there were in the 40,000 years ago, they were mingling with the Neanderthals up there, and that's why we have Neanderthal DNA. And they think that the
Mhm.
reason that we have color variation is from Neanderthals. So blue eyes, red hair, stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting.
I've heard it as a theory, but I don't know that it actually pans out because they have found other members of, as you may know, the story that the Europeans and the people who occupy India now used to be the same tribe, the Indo-Europeans, and half of them went up into Europe and half of them went over into Asia, and they found Indo-Europeans who went in that direction, who had no contact with the Neanderthals, who are like mummified and shit, and they have red hair. We don't know what their eye color was, but
Well,
you know.
they found red hair mummies in America too, which is weird.
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds literally crazy, but
Well,
might
I
have
mean,
been that it
humans
just got
did
bleached
get
out.
around back in the day. We like to think that we have the monopoly on advanced travel and whatnot, and yet the people of the Pacific Islands managed to go across all the
Oh.
Pacific Islands. So,
they're incredible. I mean, really the first mariners in the world, and just amazing. I mean, how far they went.
I know all about this. I watched Moana. I know all about this.
Is that dude that got on the raft to see if he could float across the?
Moana was a Disney movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
There was a documentary about a guy that put a raft
It-
together to prove that he could
it-
take the currents and.
It was probably, I would imagine Moana probably took inspiration from multiple sources. Probably that story is probably one of them. It's an excellent movie, by the way. I really recommend watching it.
oh yeah, it was the only thing that could get the kids to stop singing "Let It Go" from Frozen.
Yeah. He goes from "Let It Go" to "You're welcome."
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a place where the sea meets the sky. I'm singing it wrong, but you get the idea.
Yeah, that movie was so good because
Sounded
Lynn something Manuel, the guy who wrote Hamilton, wrote the
Mm.
music for that movie, and that's
Oh, okay.
part of the reason why
Yeah,
that
that's
movie is so good. Yeah,
Yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Lynn
He's-
Manuel Miranda. Yeah,
Hamilton.
that's it.
Yeah, He's like the boss of music at the moment.
He's fire, yeah.
Hmm. I didn't know about any of the. It was before Hamilton came out. He appeared on How I Met Your Mother, and I hadn't heard anything about him because his first play didn't do as well as Hamilton did. We
Yep.
only found out about it after, and he's guest starring on the show, and then he just like riffs off this epic rap about something that doesn't rhyme with Canada, and he nails it. And I'm like, who is this guy?
That would be
Very
hard to
cool.
rhyme with.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm
Incidentally,
grab something.
Apparently,
you have a
it's
dog
janitor.
there. You have a dog there, and you haven't introduced it yet.
Oh, how
Oh,
dare!
yeah,
You're holding out on us.
This is little Mojo.
Hi, Mojo.
Buddy.
Aw.
Say hi, buddy.
Hey, bud.
He's getting old. He's just wanting to be lazy.
Yeah.
There you go,
Let him
buddy.
be lazy.
Yep, doggos love the blankets.
So, what was that book called again? It was it was something 70 Legions Quorum. I wanted to do a
Oh,
Google search for it.
it's not out. This is what I'm
Oh.
working on right
Oh,
now.
oh, okay. I was doing a search
Yeah,
for it.
so
Yeah, gotcha.
yeah, no, it won't find
Okay.
it because
So where do you get like
working
the
on publishing
sources
it.
of information for each of the demons or angels or earthly beings that wait, you get
From
your
my-
source from
my Seer Stone
Aha.
and the hat. So I use all the techniques that Joseph Smith used to
And does this
translate
actually
the
work?
Book of Mormon. Well, for me, I'm like with you guys, I'm a skeptic and everything, but I'm a very creative person. And I went from Mormonism to pretty much like ufology and New Age stuff and paganism and voodoo, and fell into the polytheistic, why only have one imaginary friend kind of thing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, as a artist, I found that that creative fantasy thing type of stuff to be beneficial to me as a creative, and so I just use it in that type of way. I don't believe in the supernatural or anything.
Okay, so you're
But-
like kind of like just playing with this as a fun, like I don't want to like degrade like a hobby or as like a distraction, or like how would you
I don't think
how would
it
you
would
describe
be-
your interest in it?
I don't think it would be degrading to say something like, if you look at the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is a demonic book of how to call up demons and stuff,
Uh-huh.
and then you look at Pokemon,
Uh-huh.
they're really almost essentially the same thing. It's just a modern interpretation of something like that. You can see why evangelical groups get all down on Dungeons and Dragons and those kinds of things, because
Yeah.
they are fantasy games and people can get into them so much. When I was doing pentagram rituals and things and actual practical magical rituals, and calling up archangels, I mean, they're appearing in front of you as giant pillars of like fire,
Right.
type of stuff.
So have you actually participated in these rituals, and have you done these yourself? And like, have you actually seen things in front of you? Like, actually,
I do, but
Really?
but for me, it's in here. I don't think it's
Okay.
an external thing. It's like
So-
having a really strong imagination, but
Okay,
I
So-
visualize it so it actually becomes a visualized form.
I see. So you
See what
don't actually think this is like a manifestation of reality. You just think that it's what your brain is experiencing, but it's not necessarily what a reflection of reality is. What you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
part of
it's basically like you're the Todd McFarlane of this set of beliefs. Like you're seeing it so vividly you could in your own mind, or whatever. That if it were a comic, it would be as gnarly as like Spawn, right?
Yeah, I think those.
Like
That
if you could ink it to paper, would that be about where we're at?
Yeah, I don't know if you know Alan Moore as the comic book artist as well, and he's really influenced by magic a lot. And part of the thing with magic is to be able to visualize really strongly and use those techniques to be able to enhance it and make it more formative in your mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
That's
so
that's really
I
good
would agree
practice
with what you're saying,
for
Niddy.
artwork.
I'm
'Cause
sorry.
Yeah,
I've
so it's for art and things especially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because some of the best artists I've ever talked to say a very similar thing, that they're able to form these images in their head so detailed, they're almost real, like you could almost believe in them, and that's how they make their art as detailed as they do.
That's how I imagine what my friend's brain is doing when, because I have a friend who's a really good artist. Like, he draws really amazing stuff. And when I look at him drawing, and he just knows exactly where to put each line. Like, he'll draw straight, just pen to paper, no pencil sketching or anything. He'll just pen it and just draw something
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
amazing what people can
And
do.
yeah, and I can't do that because I can't visualize on the whole like that. I only think of like the smaller parts. So yeah, when I look at him and I see him drawing, I'm like, yeah, I'm wondering if he's actually like seeing it on the paper, but and he's just simply filling it, tracing over it what his mind is seeing.
Well,
Yeah, it's
that makes me wonder. Want to bring up the question with all of you, because I've read those articles recently about the people that don't have like an internal monologue going on in their head when
yeah,
they think,
Hmm.
and things like that. And I think that's in the same realm, that it's weird that our brains can be so much different from
yeah,
one person to another, that there's people that don't have never ever had a talking voice in their head, you know. That's,
yeah.
I mean, it's my own own voice in my head, it's not other voices, but
Yeah, I've heard a similar thing about a visualization for that matter. There's some people who can like think of an apple and they see an actual apple in 3 dimensions with all the details and whatnot. And then there's other people that have like a low res rendering, like the concept of an apple. And then there's some people who think of it in 2 dimensions, and some people who think of it in black and white. That's just what naturally pops up. It's a similar order, I think, like
Yeah.
just different ways the brains process.
I guess when Nikolai Tesla first invented its first motor, he just visualized it perfectly finished.
Yeah.
Like he already knew exactly, like it was looking at a blueprint or something. That's crazy to me.
That kind of thing, that I can almost see somebody making a case for divine inspiration. Like if Tesla had been a religious man, he could have been able to use that to like promote the faith of his choice. He'd been like, "This came to me in a vision from God Almighty," or
Well,
whoever, you know.
I'll have to remember the account because I think it did have something to do with him staring into the sun or something, or like, yeah, it was weird.
Never a good idea.
Proof of Ra.
But then there's other people, there's other folks too who are like have a synesthesia, who will, their brains will process sound as colors and
Oh, my
all
friend
do
is
all
that
kinds of
way.
interesting things. Yeah. And like you can see why people think that there are necessarily like auras around people or
Hmm.
energy fields that they can visualize, because it could be that their brain is just processing visual stimuli or audio stimuli or other stimuli very differently than your typical human does. And they could be misattributing that to, oh, I'm seeing an energy field, or oh, I'm seeing God, or I'm seeing the
Mhm.
demon. Yeah.
Hmm.
And the really frustrating thing is that we don't really have a good way to compare. Hey, how does Ember's brain process reality compared to how my brain processes reality,
Hmm.
or Niddy versus Ember, and all that kind of stuff? Like, it's really, really difficult to determine the differences between us, or really what should be considered the streamline, or the main line, or like what's normal human brain processing, or what's typical human brain processing, if there is such a thing. Yeah, so it's like all the confounding factors where we can't really determine how things work 100%, and then we have people with their own experiences processing these things all differently, and coming to all kinds of crazy conclusions about them and jumping into the supernatural. Yeah, it's such an interesting like part of the human condition where we can't. Maybe one day we will, but for now we don't have a full understanding of it. We can't even really almost discuss it in similar terms because we're all different in some way. I might describe something that Niddy might describe differently, even though we may be experiencing the same thing and so forth. Yeah, it's really
Well,
fascinating the
Hmm.
way we are like that.
are any of you familiar with the magician Darren Brown?
Mhm.
He's an English magician. He's
Of course.
amazing. He actually took an atheist that was a neurologist and was able to give her a religious experience. just through hypnosis type techniques and stuff.
I wouldn't
And so
necessarily call him a magician, though. There's a name for what he does.
Mentalist?
Yes.
yeah, it's like a mentalist.
Yeah.
But I've seen him do actual tricks and things too, though.
Okay.
But some of his mentalist things are weird. He went to like a horse race, and he'd go up to the ticket booth and turn in the ticket, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't a winning ticket," and he's like, "You did pick the right ticket." And they're like, they check again, and like, "Oh, sorry, sir," and they hand him the money. And then once they give him the money legally in England, they can't ask for it back, and so it's just, like, really funny. It's really weird. But I recommend looking him up. Darren Brown, he's amazing.
Well, he did a special called Push. And I saw it when I was like a young Christian, didn't think anything of it. But then I saw it again during my like deconstruction process. And I realized that nobody really knows who they will be tomorrow. Like the right set of circumstances, the right set of pressures, the right chemical influences, whatever, can hit you, and you're going to do something that you can't even dream that you would have done the day before.
Yeah.
And then when I saw like how influenced we can be, how fallible our experiences are, how easily we can be manipulated, I'm like, oh wait. Well, isn't this how some people just become religious? Like, the right set of circumstances kind of just influence them into a place, and they get further and further in, and they're like, holy shit, I never imagined I'd be this religious or zealous or whatever.
I think the Batman comics explored this. We're all one day away from being the Joker. It's like, physical trauma,
but
physical trauma, emotional trauma, set of circumstances, brain chemistry. You could be exposed to a mind-altering drug. Like anything could happen. Like we are the products of our brains. We are
the killing joke.
The Killing Joke. I think that was it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the comics.
With Mark Hamill as Joker. I mean,
the best Joker.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Bat tools down. He's
the best.
But religion is a spell. It's a magical spell.
After a fashion.
especially with people like you have these charismatic people. You look at the whole Benny Hinn and stuff, like the bodies hit the floor and all that. I mean, it's the same thing with the Dan Brown in a way. It's like, I mean, he can walk up, or Darren Brown, he can walk up to somebody in the subway and just like put him out like instantly. It's weird.
Yeah, like the those tricks that we see in what is it? The Kingsman, the Horseman, the magicians who like can like knock people out by waving their hands at them, like sleep, and then they poof out they go.
Yeah.
So, Gazelam, what's your like favorite being from your grimoire, and what's like the one you're most afraid of?
Oh, that's a good question.
Seen or experienced. So it's two questions.
If you need any of the images you sent me, just let me know which one. We've got quite a few.
Okay. Well, I looked up the Lesser Book of Solomon, and there's 72 demons in it. So
that's a lot of demons.
That's a lot of demons.
That's a lot of demons.
Yeah,
you can fit so many demons in this car.
It's my whole family tree. Call Ancestry.com. If you didn't know, I don't even care. My real last name is Demons, so deal with it.
We can start with the most fearful one. Can you find that image out of him? Either way, you have it right here.
Oh, okay.
It looks like kind of a
Careful of the dong on YouTube.
Dude with the package. Let's see here.
He is packing.
Well, this is
Is that Willem Dafoe?
It's Moroni Lucifer history. Yeah, there he is.
Wow. That's some awesome art around the sides. Like I like the do you know what that's
did you
called?
draw that?
What's that? Yeah,
Yeah,
what's the
that's
embellishments around that?
that's calligraphy that I did, but
That's
it's
awesome.
all Reformed Egyptian. And then
Hmm.
the top thing that looks kind of like a R, that sigil, the demon sigil, those were there was a dedication of the Kirtland Temple in the 1830s, I think it was, that there was a guy, Frederick G. Williams, that said that he was seeing these sigils light up, and he hurried and drew them all down, and so
Mhm.
there's a whole list of these
That's kind of
different
like
squiggly things.
God writing on the wall.
Yeah,
The
in the Book of
Babylonians, I think
Daniel
it was.
to
Yeah, the
to
finger.
Belshazzar,
Yeah, Belshazzar.
or no,
So,
whatever. You know what I
It was
mean,
one of the Babylonians. Balthazar, Belshazzar.
right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, some son of Nebuchadnezzar that was a piece of shit.
but the accounts really weird with the dedication of the temple because Bryce Blankenagel, that's on the show with us on Aaron's show once in a while, the Joseph Smith, he
Hmm. Hmm.
he's the one that spearheaded this ethnogen theory. It's been around for a while, but as a naturalistic explanation that the wine and the sacrament was actually um, spiked with a hallucinogen because there were angels coming through the walls and orbs flying through the air.
Oh my.
That
At
sounds
one
about
at,
right.
at one point, there was like a giant cruise ship, like a steamboat that was flying through the sky.
Wow.
Really crazy
Wild.
stuff. And his brother drank so much of the wine and stuff. He was on the second balcony of the temple, puking his guts out. And
I,
I came up with a oh excuse me.
I was meaning to ask this earlier, but I lost my opportunity to. But you just mentioned it again, and feel free to say no comment or tell me go away. Don't ask me that. But for the stuff that you experience, do you rely on any like chemical assistance for that, like for your experiences when you explored the stuff?
Oh, not lately. I mean,
Okay,
in Arizona, cannabis is legal, and
yeah, it's legal
I've
up
been
here in
using
Washington too. Yeah.
I've been enjoying that, but
Okay.
and I think it helps my creative process. Although I did see the goddess once on mushrooms, and it was pretty amazing.
Neat.
It was,
Okay. Cool.
there's a story of when Krishna is eating the ghee, and his mother tries to stop him, and she peers into his mouth to see if he's been eating the ghee, and she sees just universes upon universes eternally,
Trippy.
and like that's what I saw her. She appeared in front of me and she starts smiling, and her eyes were these galaxies that just started spinning into it. And I
Wow.
was like,
Damn.
"Oh, it's you!" I knew it was her, and I was like, "Oh my!" And like as soon as I recognized her, she like dissolved away. It was really weird.
Hmm. So do you take inspiration from that and then draw stuff like we're seeing here? Then basically.
I don't know. Most of my artwork looks really psychedelic, and people. I've been kind of labeled as like a psychedelic guy and things, but I
Okay.
think it's mostly because my art just looks trippy and stuff, and
All right.
it's the only way people can explain it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing that. It gives me
Oh
more
yeah,
context. It gives me more context to when I'm viewing your stuff and understanding it. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
and all my stuff, it's like it's so layered that it really takes people a long time to wrap their head around it, like my Mormon movement and all that stuff, just
Yeah.
because there's so much that goes into it. But anyway, but my hypothesis, which is really interesting too, just to kick it up another level, is in the Kirtland Temple they had these dividers, cam curtain dividers that they could set up and divide up into different rooms. And this is in the 1830s. It wouldn't take much at all to like, if you want glowing orbs, all you'd have to do is get a magic lantern behind the curtain and start doing that, and people are writing down weird letters and
Yeah.
things. And if you have shadow box effects and camera obscura type things and smoke and mirrors type of stuff, it doesn't take much to put on a show. And if you have a bunch of people hopped up on drugs and then you
Yeah.
add that to it,
Yeah.
gonna have some crazy religious
Just-
experience.
Let their brains do half the work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the old spiritualist shows like the Fox Sisters and such, where people really thought they were seeing the things because some of the tricks were basic but also weirdly sophisticated, much like you're describing.
And they go back that far back in time. It's interesting. But the thing that's scary about Moroni Lucifer history and why he's such a fearful demon is that he's about blood and murder. And there is a guy named Ron Lafferty that in the 1980s he was a fundamentalist Mormon, and Mormons have a belief that there are certain sins that if you commit them, the only way you can ever atone from them is to have your own life taken.
Oof.
And so this guy decided that he wanted to save his his niece and his sister-in-law, and he murdered him.
Wow.
And him and his brother, and this was in the town I grew up in. And so it had all this Mormon undertones. They believed they were prophets. They had this school of the prophets they were entertained with, and really starts fundamentalist. But the guy, when he was in his prison cell later on, Ron Lafferty, he actually would put a sign in his underpants that said, "Do not enter," because he believed that Moroni Lucifer Hitler would crawl up his ass and make him do all these bad things.
Basically turn him into a puppet.
That's what the magic underwear's for. Oh goodness.
Keeps the hands of the devil
So,
out of your butt.
Sumami asks, what kind of sins required that, like the sacrifice thing?
I have the list. Let's see. Apostasy, theft. I'm assuming that's like some kind of serious theft. Fornication, sodomy, and adultery. Oh wait. Oh no, never mind. Fornication. But I'm sure.
He claimed it was adultery, but his definition of adultery was that she didn't like what her husband was involved with them, which is a pretty wide stretch of what adultery would be,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
But another interesting thing on this is I named it Moroni Lucifer Hister because of the Nostradamus thing, where Nostradamus said that.
Yes.
So that I could do my little anachronistic type of deal and be like, whoa, look, Nostradamus must have been right with the Hister thing. Let's see. We could go to, well, we talked about Kane already, though, but we could put his picture up if you want.
Sure.
It's this
Let's see,
hairy-looking dude.
The fuzzy dude. Let me see if I've got a fuzzy dude here. Yeah, here we go. Bloop.
So the story is that Kane is still alive, but he was like kind of cursed to become this like monster roaming the earth?
I believe he's Bigfoot, so I think they just believe that he's a big hairy man. But in the story of it's this pioneer guy. I wish I remembered all the names and the details, but he said that he was riding on his horse, and the man stood at the same height that he was at, so it would have had to be a big dude. And he said that he was Kane. He said he was Kane, and he was cursed to roam the earth for all of his life and all this stuff. We'd learn it in Boy Scouts. It was like kind of. It's not like doctrinal or anything, but a lot of Mormons believe that Kane is Bigfoot.
Really?
That's fascinating.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Um,
That's very peculiar.
It is in Latter-day Saint folklore. I'm like, every time you say something that like attributes to Mormonism,
you think I'm being all crazy,
I just didn't know. No, I'm not thinking you're crazy. I like want to know like where this is, like where and who like believes this, and like the deeper content of it. Like especially like
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
said the Lesser Book of Solomon, I'm like, ooh, what's that? And I'm like, now I've learned it's from it's mostly from the 17th century. It had 72 demons in it. There's one manuscript that has one less demon.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
I
I love
speed
that
read
stuff.
this stuff too on stream sometimes.
Oh, nice. Well, some of it, I guess what I was meaning to say is some of it seems so outrageous, and you see these nice, clean-cut Mormons and things. It's like, oh, they really believe that kind of stuff? Like
I mean, behind
collaging
the scenes, there's all kinds of other beliefs going on.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Even
As you may know, I live near where Mormon sacred Jerusalem place is. It's not far from Joseph Smith's farm in the Hill Cumorah and all that stuff. So we
Oh,
do
nice.
have a lot of there's some local Mormons, but mostly they're transient Mormons. They're coming to see the thing and then they go back to wherever the fuck they came from. And so I run into different Mormons all the time, and they always seem so happy, but quite a lot of them seem too happy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it's a lot like the Jehovah Witnesses. It's a high demand religion,
yeah.
so
I was actually just about to mention that because I'm a former Jehovah's Witness, and
yeah,
the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Hayes Russell, he was into pyramidology, Christian Zionism, spiritualism. Like the current Jehovah's Witness faith, a lot of it stems from those older, more pagan beliefs. Yeah, I think just until recently, I think Charles Taze Russell's tombstone had like a pyramid on it with an eye or something like that, and they recently removed it
Oh,
and made it much
wow.
more. Yeah, like they're kind of erasing that. But I've heard rumors of like a vault at the Witness headquarters with like these old artifacts from like back in the 1800s from the founder. A lot of it having to do with pyramidology. His tombstone had it on there, and they're kind of like slowly erasing it because it's very inconvenient history for them. But yeah, a lot of these modern day religions that have like popped up in the past like 200, 300 years, a lot of weird stuff behind them that they don't want to talk about because not Christian, or at least not. It's embarrassing to them.
I wonder if that's
Yeah.
sort of how the Catholic Church got started. Like, we have no idea what's locked in the Vatican vaults and such.
Yeah.
It's probably locked away for a similar reason, because there was so much random paganism at the time, and the church built on that, and then they've gradually been erasing that and pretending we were super Christian all along.
Oh, that's
I,
totally happening in Mormonism right now, like
I,
hardcore.
I just assume that if they don't want to show it to you, it's either embarrassing or it's a defeater for one of their beliefs. Like that's usually my assumption. Like if they have an artifact and it's genuine, but you don't want to show it to me, something's up, because that means it doesn't. If it supports the belief, they would probably be showing that off left and right. But if they aren't, like, highly sus.
The crazy thing is they released the Seer Stone that Joseph used to supposedly translate the Book of Mormon, and it was really controversial because it was kind of a mythical status or anti-Mormon status or denial type of status, and then when because of the internet and South Park and things like that, they had to finally come out and admit to it, and then a lot of people are upset about it because they think it kind of demystified everything, and to see the stone. And I've heard people just go, well, it's just a rock, it's just a rock, but it is really interesting, because it's not just a rock, it's this weird kind of banded jasper and hematite that it looks about the size of a quail egg, and it's brown and really smooth, and so it looks like it's been tumbled through in the water or something. But what geologists say that it is it was actually a gizzard stone of a dinosaur, and that's why it's all smooth and rounded like that. It's because it's gizzarded. It was a dinosaur gizzard stone like birds have. And
That's interesting.
yeah, and the interesting thing about that is that so my family early were involved with early Mormonism in the magical circles, And there was a family called the Chase family that actually would go treasure seeking and doing magic with Joseph Smith. And when in the 1819 probably, Joseph Smith walked like 5 miles to track down the Sally Chase that was in my family. It's probably a cousin, but she had a green stone or a green glass that she used as a seer stone, and she's the one that taught him how to use the rock in the hat thing. And he used that so he could find his own stone. Later on, her brother Willard Chase and Joseph Smith, they were digging a well, which like they were actually searching for treasure, and came across this stone. Willard found it and said, "Whoa, this is a curiosity." And Joseph says, "Oh, let me see that." And he looked at it and he's like, "Can I borrow this?" And he's like, "Well, I really am the one that found it. I'd like to have it." And he's like, "Well, I think this would be really important to me." And so he said, Willard let him take it, but on the saying that he would want it back. So Joseph Smith ends up translating the Book of Mormon and using the stone. The 116 pages that they first translate get lost. Somewhere in that time period, Willard gets the stone back, and there's kind of this down period where Joseph sends his brother back over to Willard's house and says, Joseph says he can't commence translating the Book of Mormon unless we get that stone back from you. And he's like, "I don't want to give that to you guys. You guys already stole it from me once." And he finally talked him out of it. And to this day, that stone's in the vault over there. So we claim.
I see a picture of it here on Wikipedia. It's like a brown stone with like a swirl design on it, or natural swirl pattern design on it. Yeah.
And it's a banded jasper. That's what's interesting about it too. Is it's like petrified moss or seaweed. I have some of that at home, like in my own vault. That's a round piece. It's really cool.
It was a Utah pterosaur that got done grinding its seaweed diet.
So it was more of a bezoar than a proper stone. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty
Now
cool.
I'm curious. It's a little bit off topic, but somewhat related. Is this supposed to be the same seeing stone that Moses gave to Aaron and his sons on the breastplate that made them officially high priests?
No, it's really weird because that's where it's been so strange with contemporary LDS and Mormons all about with this Seer Stone is that we were always given the narrative that he was given a Urim and Thummim with the plate, and the Urim and Thummim were these giant lenses within like a wire kind of brass type thing, but they these Urim and Thummim are what he supposedly translated the book with, but history and all the accounts say it was actually that little brown stone. And so I think there was a breastplate along with the sword of Laban and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, there was a breastplate. And so but I don't know if it was the same type of breastplate that had all the stones and everything in it.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, Joseph Smith went out of his way in several places to try to lend, like, Moses' authority to his new church, even calling the Urim and Thummim by the same names as from the Pentateuch. So
Yeah,
it just seemed likely that he might try to say they're the same that they came across in the wooden submarines or whatever.
he was kind of caught in a trick with that one because while he was going to prior to get the plates, he was told by the angel that he would have to take his brother with him. But his brother dies and passes away in between, and so he's been commanded that he has to have another individual with him when he goes to retrieve him. And he finds this other magician and they're out there scrying and looking. He's in looking to see if you can find it, and the magician plants in his head. He's like, "Well, don't you see a pair of spectacles?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "Are you sure there's not like a pair of spectacles and a sword?" And then Joseph Smith was kind of caught in a trick, so he's like, "Oh yeah, I do see them." And so it was actually somebody else that planted that idea, and then he had to stick with it.
Hmm.
So I think that's
Whoopsies.
where some of the discrepancies come about with the Seer Stone versus
It's like,
the Urim and
this is
Thummim.
this is not going quite as to plan as I wanted, but I'll
Mhm,
roll with
mhm.
it.
A
Yeah, well,
grifter got grifter sniped.
yep. That's the downside of running that kind of scam is like if you want
Yeah.
the cred of having the eyewitness, he saw it too. You have to confirm whatever he says also. It's like, oops.
Exactly.
Oh
Oh, it's
goodness.
hilarious.
So do these the markings on the edge? You said they're like reconstituted reformed Egyptian. Do they have actual meaning or are they just aesthetic?
Oh yeah, they do. They are the demons' names, and so I should have sent you this one, but you could if you full screen me, you could probably see this for a second. I with
Whoop.
this
Oh
was what we
neat.
would joke with Aaron and Tomer, and I'd sent this to Tomer, and he was saying that I sent him the magical alphabet, and Aaron was like, "Oh yeah, I used to make up alphabets when I was a little kid once too."
Yeah, a lot of those look like Theban script.
Yeah, so let's see if I can. What's interesting about this is um, these weird letters over here are called the Deseret Alphabet. And this was an alphabet that Brigham Young created in Utah in order to segregate and set up his theocracy where he was trying to start his own everything out here. And it's a
Yeah.
phonetic alphabet, and so it can be used in with any language, and it's a phonetic alphabet. So it has like um, the long sounds and the short sounds, double sounds, and then your regular hard letters. And I took those and found the Hebrew equivalent to the
Oh, okay.
Deseret alphabet, and then I put in the Reformed Egyptian and found those correspondences through my spiritual eye and
That's
the
fascinating. I'd always wondered because like some of the symbols that I've seen in the witch's alphabet, Theban script, they're very very similar. Some of them are in fact the same. I'd always wondered where they came from. Like some look kind of Greekish, some look kind of astrology-ish, which I suppose would also be Greekish, but some of them didn't, and there's a lot of similarities. I wonder if there's more Hebrew in modern culture than people really realize.
Well, it's funny because there's an account where there was a linguist named Charles Anton that Joseph Smith wrote down a bunch of the letters, and that's why we actually have those. Is there's this thing called the Anton transcript. Um, it's probably a copy of the copy that we have, but he took it to this linguist, and the when they took it to him, it was Martin Harris. He said the book was sealed, and his account was that he said, "Oh yeah, this is the most pure language I've ever seen." And then when he told it was a sealed book, Anton tore it up and said, "Well, I cannot read a sealed book," and threw it away. But if you hear Charles Anton's account, he says, there were all these curious markings, and some of them looked like upside down Greek and Egyptian and horoscope symbols and everything else. So I
Ooh,
think you called it there.
I can
And
bigify. That's neat. I didn't realize I could do that. I have superpowers.
give somebody a seizure.
Let's climb right in the beastie's eyeballs.
Ah.
I was I was debating on whether to ask or not, but I'm just going to go for it. Is this guy packing too, like the last one is? It's hard to determine.
A
I say
little
he's
bit, I
Yep.
think.
packing.
Yep.
Wow.
He- He's
Just
tucking
out,
and
out
packing
and
a
proud. I love it. Great. I'm
always
detecting a
get in trouble with
pattern.
I mean,
like
it's a step up from Renaissance demons, which had faces in their crotches. So
Yeah, I guess so.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah. That's an oof.
that's not where a face should be.
I love the early devils that have like his belly has the face in it and faces on his knees and
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. And now to switch scenes, you've got a crap ton of these,
Wow,
don't
that's
you?
a lot of them.
yeah, that's
Oh,
the
wow.
70 there. So it's
Wow.
all
And
of them.
most of those from the Lesser Book of Solomon as well.
No, none of them are. They're all original
Oh,
demons.
okay, cool.
But really similar in the format. So, there's
Okay,
a
but do
circle
they
and a
have some
triangle and a
correlation to something in Mormonism too?
oh yeah. I'll,
Okay.
so I did that's why I have certain characters that are definitely associated with Mormonism. Like there's Jehovah Samal. So this is the satanic version of Mormonism. And in with the within the Order of Amen, the concept
Oh,
is that
I like.
it's like
Sorry,
Gnosticism.
I like that one. Can you go back a little bit, Ember?
The
That
one
very
with the
top
skullish.
center one. Yeah, that one looks awesome. It's like
This guy?
snakes coming out of a
Oh
skull.
shit! I'm already close. I can't get any closer.
Hey, biggin.
And
Are you
I know.
getting
Zoom and
strobed?
enhance.
Are you seeing the strobing, or is that just because of
that
my
one there, yeah, the one he
connection?
just pointed at. Yeah, that one looks awesome.
Yeah, a bunch
Yeah,
of these are
each-
nifty and creepy.
these are all very unique. Like each one has like a different feel and personality to it.
So one of the really exciting things, and it was a big epiphany for me, was it was like, okay, well, how am I going to come up with all these different demons and things? And I started to think how in how contemporary Christian groups, there's a lot of that will say this, what is your name, demon? And the demon will be like, my name is theft, or my name is anger, or
My name is Steve.
It's like
I'd love a Greg Locke exorcism to go that way. Like,
It's
my
like
name
a-
is Steve.
It's like a Dungeons and
Steve.
Dragons dungeon master coming up with a name on the fly.
Yeah.
I am Chadwick, the barber. I guess.
Yeah, so there's a little of that, but I was thinking more like oh, what is it? I'm trying to think of what some of the Ten Commandments are and stuff. But anyway, I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if these demons and why they're so bad and evil is that they're based on logical fallacies and biases.
Hell yeah.
And so that's what I've done is their attributions are we can go to this one. This one was influenced by our Joseph's myth stuff that we were doing with Aaron. Is that a big thing that's funny about these Book of Mormon reading shows, especially with people that are not as familiar with Mormonism and things, is that you get the
This one. There we go.
is you get people that don't have the background ethnically, and so they'll say stuff like the prophet Nephi instead of Nephi, or
Mm-hmm.
Moroni instead of Moroni. And this, when we were reading with Aaron, he pronounced Abinadi as Abenadi, and so this is the demon Abenadi.
Love
And
it.
that's really common with demons too. I'm sure Eric knows because you've been studying some of this stuff. But a lot of times demons will be degraded versions of other people's gods and stuff, and so
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
the
one
name
it's
will just be
it's one religion talking shit about another religion's deity. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm. I've gotten that from a few apologists lately, mostly on the evangelical side, where I'll say the usual thing like, "How do you know your God is the true one and all the others are false?" And they say, "Oh no, they're all real. It's just all the other gods are what I call demons.
Yeah, mine's the best.
Yeah.
Mine's the good one. Yeah,
The old Justin Martyr apologetic.
yeah.
Um,
I use that
so-
line of reasoning. Sorry, Niddy. I used that line of reasoning on some JWs at my door a few weeks ago. Basically, like, how do you know that your God is not a trickster God and he's just fooling you? Like the Bible, everything you think is right, your religion, everything. Like, how do you know your God is not just tricking you? He's just a trickster God. He's just having fun with you. Yeah, it's
There's the
Mhm.
Bible
and that's
says
that's
Good
exactly
old
what the other
Descartes
religions are asking.
demon.
Is yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Niddy. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I love how this one's brain is coming out of its head. So what does
Yeah,
this one
so-
represent exactly?
So this attributions are the survivorship fallacy, which is interesting
Nice.
because with Abinadi in the Book of Mormon, he is kind of the martyr of the Book of Mormon that sacrificed before Christ is, and so Abinadi is kind of his menacing shadow, where he's the one that survives and thinks that every
Looks very anxious. Like he could use a Xanax or something.
yeah, he's like,
His nafs, as the Sikhs might say.
the Abinadi was burnt. Abinadi was burned and sacrificed with a bundle of sticks.
Hmm.
It actually says the cigarette word in the Book
I
of
was gonna
Mormon.
say he actually got killed by a faggot. Neat.
Yeah.
The only acceptable time to use that word.
Faggots are a bundle of
I'm
sticks.
trying to parse out what part of the artwork to me says surviving, but I can't quite.
Yeah,
Is it just that like
I think some of the artwork is more abstract. Demons are just like, you're supposed to see them in the smoke.
Well,
kind of
okay.
thing.
I guess like
It's more the
eating
fear of
yourself is
or
like
the
doing
fear of
whatever it
surviving.
takes to to keep living or something.
So in real life, how big are these prints in real life? Like what's the actual?
They're about
sizes?
4 to 6 inches or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. You held one up earlier. Okay, I see.
Like the width of my really big hot chocolate
It's like a
mug.
like a coaster you'd find on a table.
Yeah,
Yeah,
about
yeah,
the
yeah.
size of a
Yeah.
coaster.
Yeah.
I have
But
a
don't
big
use them
lens-
as those
lens.
because that would be blasphemy.
Well, not the.
to the demon.
Well, depends on what religion you are.
Yeah.
If you're not a part of this religion, hey, that's perfectly acceptable to use these as coasters.
Well, the whole beginning, like
Maybe that's how
the
you
old-
summon the demon in and you drink
It's like using a Bible as a doorstop or to level your piano. It's like it's all
how
a
to
matter of
become
perspective.
possessed.
Yeah, absolutely. I
it.
mean,
It
hell,
floats up into the drink.
demons that are based on logical fallacies, you never know what they might be into.
Yeah, I've gone really with the old. I sent you some examples of it with the old English kind of King James prose, So reading Joseph Smith with it. I mean, I've read the Book of Mormon a billion times, it seems, but to go over it, find all the quirkiness about it, like that, Durst and words like that you can put in, just make it hilarious because there's so many hilarious things. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
ended-
Yeah, here's one that's got a little bit of it.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's the golden parchment. That was actually parchment that was in the possession of the Smith family. It's believed to be owned by Joseph
So
Smith.
what's this supposed to indicate for us?
Holiness to the Lord, and I see the Jew Hebrew name for God at the bottom there, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, I think.
Yeah,
very bottom
essentially, I
there?
think
Yeah.
if I remember right, it's mostly a protection talisman.
Huh.
That folds up.
Interesting.
It's really crazy in real life. It's called the gold parchment because it's all has gold paint and stuff with it. And
This is
I mean, it's a
reminiscent of the
parchment.
pyramidology that the JWs were part of a long time ago.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me because I've seen this symbol coupled with Norse runes in a few places. This symbol appears to be related, but it's definitely not the same. And then I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. Like it's a pentagram that's slightly misshapen somehow. It's all slightly familiar, but also not quite. You know?
Well,
Yeah,
religious
there,
charming, didn't that start in like the 17th? No, like 14th, no, like 15th century or something like that, where Christians were like, yeah, let's go. Let's have charms and stuff to stop the witches.
I think it did get
I
popular around
can't
that
remember
time.
exactly when, but I feel like it's definitely pre or around the time of the Renaissance. Hold on.
Historians have traced these symbols down to magical books that were around at the time, and they date to, I think, the 1500s.
Yeah. It stands to reason that they would be like anti-witch charms because as you may recall, in modern parlance, we refer to a hex as a witch's spell, a curse upon a person. But they back in the day, they were actually considered to be drawn spells with 6 forks. That's why they were hexes, because they have a roughly hexagonal shape. So an
Oh
8-forked
yeah,
counter spell would be more powerful.
yeah. I've Oh, here they are right here.
Oh, I
But
better full screen you again.
this book is a really cool book. Um, it's by a guy named Reginald Scott. It was written in the 1500s, called The Discovery of Witchcraft. And
Oh.
it was awesome because this was actually an expose on witches, and the point of view of it was that King James was like defending demons. He's like, yes, demons are real, and he had this really sectarian, secular type of point of view where he's like, we shouldn't be burning people for superstitious kind of bullshit. And so it has everything in here from actual stage magic to different spells like how to become invisible and things like that. So you could see these. Oh,
Oh.
sorry.
Put you back.
These knives here, I was always like, what are these? These are so weird, but they're knives that make it look like you're cutting yourself. So see, you can stick your arm where that little divot is.
So it's actually magic tricks.
Yeah, like some of it are real magic tricks. Like this is one, how to look like your head's been decapitated. And
Huh.
so they have the body there, and the guy's sitting under the table, and his head sticking on the plate.
Yeah, I didn't
Flat,
realize that trick was
fire.
that old. That's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
and but then there's other stuff like weird stuff, like bury a dead person's head and put a bean in its mouth, and then dig up the bean and it'll make you invisible or something, weird stuff like that. But that was where he was giving examples like that's how could this be true because it's so outrageous. And then if someone is if it, a lot of it's just trickery, and then people are believing tricks, and then getting burned for just being a stage magician or something.
Yeah, and that yeah, then you end up basically burning Siegfried and Roy at the stake.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, come on now.
I
But
found the wildest. This is in the similar vein. When I was just doing um, research on ancient manuscripts uh, to compare like what the religious milieu was of the ancient Near East, I found the Greek magical papyri, or
oh,
sometimes it's called
cool.
like the Greek Egyptian one, like a translation of
Yeah.
that. And some
Oh,
of
I
this,
love that.
like the spells, are compiled from like the second, was it? It's like the 5th century or something like that. Oh, second
Wow.
century BC. And what you'll
Wow.
see throughout the centuries in the compilation of the spells, the earlier ones are more Greek influenced, and the later ones start syncretizing in uh, Yahweh, and eventually like like Jesus and the Christian God, like
Yeah,
and become
this
more
protection.
about a monotheistic God for appealing to enable the power of the spell or whatever. And some of the spells are hilarious.
Oh, one of my favorite in there is called the Headless Ritual, Helios or something, and it's really cool because it's calling up this headless spirit that's kind of like your higher self, and then you become the head. I've done a modified version of it for my book. It's wild, and it's like,
Oh, there's one to check for like an unfaithful spouse, and like you leave like this pot outside your house, and if it starts to smell like rotten eggs, like your spouse is cheating on you.
oh,
I thought that one was really funny.
I know. Can you imagine your spouse is like, I promise I haven't been. He's like, bullshit. That
But the
stuff smells
pot
like
says you
eggs.
have. There's like one for becoming invisible, and there's like all these conditions of what you can and can't do while you're invisible. Like you can't travel east. It's something ridiculous. I was like, what the fuck?
It's like a superpower, but you have a really bad side effect.
The
Like
one
you,
I
you
saw.
can fly, but everyone can smell you for 6 miles.
Yeah.
I have super strength, but my toenails grow at an unprecedented rate when I start using it.
The one I saw had this little bean that would make you invisible, and it was this big process. But at the end, it says, "Well, pop it into a kid's mouth and try it out first to see if it works."
Good plan. Good plan.
Tested
Never
on
see your
kid.
kid again.
Test
It works.
out.
Wasn't there a movie about a superhero who could only turn invisible if no one was looking?
Mystery Men.
Oh, whoa.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, it was Mystery.
Yeah,
I was a
yeah.
kid in Mystery Men, and the entire movie, he's like, "Yeah, I can turn invisible, but only when no one is looking and I'm not looking." And everyone was like, "Oh my god, you're full of shit." At the end of the movie, it's actually true. He actually can do that and turn invisible as long as no one's looking and he's not looking. Yeah, it was great.
Wow.
It
It's
was
like
such a great
quantum
twist.
mechanics. So,
Oh man.
Observer effect and such.
Yeah.
if you put up this way, we could go on a little JW talk.
Oh, hold
They're
on.
two colored cards together.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
But I think I gave these.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, Tony.
I think
Oh,
I have one of
yeah,
those.
I recognize that face. What's his name?
Kimball,
Yeah.
President Kimball.
There we go.
But I thought
Oh,
you'd think
Yeah,
Eric would think these are interesting because of the
I recognize some of
collage.
this art. Yeah.
So this is my Mormon endowment tarot, and it's all based on the Mormon endowment. And each card represents the whole. It's kind of like the whole storyboard of the endowment. So
Yeah.
it's an actual self-initiation deck where you can
Yeah.
use each card to initiate yourself through it. But at the same time, since it's a card deck, then it's like a choose your own adventure thing too, where you
Yeah.
can just make up your own story and everything.
On the first day card, that bottom left spot with that angel with that crown on his head. The crown wasn't part of the original art, but I remember that angel. I think he was from the Revelation book. Yeah, that dude.
Yeah,
think
so
he's
that
from the Revelation
Revelation book was a huge influence on me at a young age because
Yeah.
I always loved the artwork in it.
That was
And,
a trippy book with that artwork. Yeah, it was trippy.
I was sad that they discontinued it because I thought that's what kind of made the
Yeah.
religion cool in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. But no, they retired that book a long time ago.
I had the missionaries come over when I was in my early 20s and lived in a bachelor pad with a bunch of friends, and
Yeah.
they came over the first time, and we sat down and are like, you'll read this literature, won't you? It's like, oh yeah. And we got talking the next time, and I said, okay, so if the glorified state of like heavenly state that we're all trying to get to is like the paradise state like Adam and Eve lived in, wouldn't we want to do as much as we can in this state to try to I try to become that or do things to try to obtain that. Shouldn't we all be vegetarian? And he got so weirded out. He's like, oh well, because if the lamb's laying with the tiger and all that shit, it's not eating each other. So that means everybody in heaven's a vegetarian, right?
That does raise an
And that
interesting question. Like, if there's no death in heaven, what exactly do people eat?
lab meat,
I
they can make
guess
it.
Magical fruit.
it's only
Because the
cheeses
tree
and
of-
nuts and things.
Well,
Fruit-
the tree
fruit
of
meat.
life is supposedly like reinstated with a like ever running the living river of living waters or whatever in the middle of the great city.
Where does mana come from? Remember mana from heaven?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
How's that factor in?
We were always told it tasted like
that's the
like
hors d'oeuvres to the heaven party.
honey bread.
Honey bread.
Honey bread hors
I
d'oeuvres.
was pictured as or mentioned as like sugar cookies, like sugar cookie crumbs.
and humanely procured quail,
There's a
but we don't
Mormon
get
myth.
sick from it.
There's a Mormon thing at the pioneers where they had the quail, and they said they were so plentiful that they were able to just walk up to them and pick them up, and it
Yep.
saved all these pioneers that were starving to death. But they attributed that to manna from heaven.
I've heard the same story except with New England lobsters.
Ooh.
Lobsters used to be so
Yeah,
plentiful in New England. You can just walk on the beach and just pick them up.
it
Just
was
right
a
off the
commoner's
beach.
food for a long time.
Yeah, it was like considered a
Mhm.
garbage food, and there was like
Yeah,
This-
They are bottom feeders. I mean,
there was like laws to say that like, you couldn't feed prisoners lobster more than like 3 times a week or something like that because it was just considered such a
How
garbage
horrible.
food.
How
yeah,
horrible.
and now it's like a delicacy. It's like you go to the Maine, you're like, yes, give me the lobster.
Yeah.
They're
Well, people get
closely
started on crayfish, and then they're like, they come in bigger sizes? Oh my god.
Aren't
That's
they related to the cockroach?
yeah, cockroach, crawdad, lobster. Yeah, sure,
I
why not?
understand
They'll look
it's,
kind of
it's
the same.
still
Why not?
something like that in Alaska where, Pacific lobsters they don't have the big honking claws like they do in the Atlantic, but the tail part is virtually identical. And that they also have the bigger crabs over there. And if you're away from the cities, you can just wade out into the water and like just start grabbing shellfish and have yourself a snack. I'm so jealous.
Yep.
But I went to the thrift store and picked up that Revelations book, and then the next time they came over, I'm like, yeah, I have this cool book. And he was like, oh, well, that's kind of a deep cut. He's like, are you reading that? And it was an interesting conversation because I remember, I'm in my early 20s. This is like 30 years ago. And and he was like, I said, well, is that really what they are going to look like in the second coming? Or there's going to be these giant dragons and stuff? And he's like, well, it's very possible it might look like that, but we just don't know if it's going to look like that. So I don't know if that's a common thing for JW's response, but
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to, but yeah, it's kind of all over the place with that. It's inconsistent to say the least.
Mormons are kind of allowed to think if something is literal or if something is isn't.
It's whatever supports the point being made at the moment, usually with the witnesses, whether it's literal or figurative.
Sometimes both, sometimes neither.
Sometimes both. Sometimes sometimes it's both. The dual fulfillment of prophecy. This is a literal telling and also a figurative telling of the future.
Ooh.
Why not? Yeah,
Sure.
Gives that flexibility with interpreting scripture. It's great.
Don't think about it too hard. Here's a
It's
VHS
not
from the frickin' council to explain it for you.
It's not a bug. It's a feature.
Mhm.
Yeah. Pretty
I
much.
want a bumper sticker that says Jesus died for a metaphor.
It's rough.
Yep.
So what is this thingy?
Oh, so that's the original Frederick G. Williams um, of all these symbols that are on the top part. And so I've taken all
Uh-huh.
those letters, and that's where all the demon sigils have come from. Those are what he wrote down when he was seeing the fiery letters in the temple. So that's the actual original manuscript.
That's trippy as hell.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
crazy.
I wonder what hallucinogens he was on to start seeing those letters.
That can be found on the Joseph Smith papers. I think if you put in Frederick G. Williams characters, it'll pop up.
Yeah.
They're all written in pretty straight lines, so whatever it was, it probably wasn't too strong.
Yeah, but there's also like writing sideways across the thing that
Yeah, his
it
son wrote that, trying to
ah
explain what it was. It says something like, these are the characters that my father saw at the dedication of the Kirtland Temple or something like that. I
fascinating.
think those other
Fascinating.
lines might have been added later, but the calligraphy, it was definitely like some type of pen that you'd probably have to dip in ink. Imagine. I don't know
Neat.
what the technology was in
Oh
1830.
yeah, yeah. It'd have to be some kind of dippy pen, probably with a big old turkey feather off the back or something.
Probably ostrich feather.
Big quill.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know if they'd have an ostrich feather. I'm I'm pretty sure they discovered Australia in the 19th century, but I don't
I
know.
think I think Joseph Smith in his Nauvoo Captain Legion, he had a giant ostrich feather in his hat, if I remember right. So they must have, because I had a grandfather. This would have been more 1850, but he supposedly went on a mission to Australia.
Ostriches. Yeah, let's go with discovered. Okay. Linnaeus added ostriches to his happy little collection of proto-taxonomy in 1758.
Whoa.
So yeah, I guess they could have had ostrich feathers in the 19th century.
All the way
I think
here in
most
America.
feathers are hollow in the middle. Like I think just about almost any feather would work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Mormonism we're talking about though. It's going to be an eagle feather because it is a USA religion. So it's going to be eagle
Yeah,
feather.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless Joseph Smith was a closet Franklinist, then it would be a turkey feather.
It's a
And
turkey
that
feather,
guy.
but he claimed it was an eagle feather.
I see, I see.
Because it being such a liar and shyster and all.
I would tell everybody he was a vegetarian.
It's a
Oh
vegetable
man.
feather. That's what it is. You people in the chat are planning something that sounds like a lot of fun, and you're not inviting me. Come on now.
They're trying to go to hell. Yeah.
Some of these cards, I didn't give you the pictures of them, but they're interesting. They show the actual penalties um, and the grip within the Mormon endowment. And I think it's interesting to see these because these first two grips, this one and this one, are identical to the two first Masonic grips and penalties.
Yeah, so there's definitely some kind of overlap going on.
This penalty is just swear that you'll slit your throat if you ever reveal the secrets.
Also trippy.
And yet, here are the secrets.
This you'll get your heart torn out.
Ooh, that's rude.
Expositors.
Yeah. And
These are
these are the cards that are available on your Etsy store?
I have one deck on there, but it's like super expensive because it's all sold out.
Ah,
I think there's
Well,
some
yeah. How
like
do you
floating
how do
around.
you produce multiples of those?
There's a card company that I actually went through to have them
Awesome.
made. They have a box and everything with them. But this is that your bowels will be cut out and spilled on the ground. But it's directly Freemasonry. But the grips are interesting because in in Mormonism, this grip is through the palm here, which represents
The stigmata.
the stigmata of Jesus Christ.
I was
But
going to say that won't work with anybody except Jesus.
this one is called the sure sign, or the nail in the sure place, because the sign is to go like this, because that represents Christ not slipping off the cross.
Yeah, that's
So
what I
more,
was told too.
yeah. So
Because
that's
Jehovah's
why.
Witnesses believe that Christ was crucified on a torture stake and not
On a post.
not a cross. So for that to work, the nail would have to go through the wrists instead of the hands.
So that's one commonality with Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses too. That
Yeah.
I think that I can't. I have a book on that, and there was actually a scientific experiment that they did with corpses to see if it would be possible, and that's where that whole thing came from.
Yeah.
You'd slip off the cross if it went through your palms. They
Yeah.
actually did a practical investigation of it.
Yeah, I've
Is
I've
that-
heard of things like that. Like there's a tradition in Brazil, I think, one of the villages. They have somebody is voted like Jesus of the year every Easter or something, and he goes through the whole thing. He carries his cross up to the top of the hill, and then they nail him to the boards and they put him up for the weekend. And when they would put the nail through his palm, sometimes it would just tear like right out from between the finger bones. So they had to start nailing him through the wrist for that
Well,
reason too.
not to bring this up again because this was behind the scenes, but with John Safran is an Australian comedian, anthropologist, documentary guy that did the series called John Safran versus God. And I've heard you guys talk about this before on other shows, but they were the guests that were bringing it up. But he's Jewish, and he actually went down there and was crucified. And they actually do put the nails right in his hand and show the whole thing. But the climax of the whole series is that he ends up, I mean, he goes to Haiti and like goes through a Haitian ritual where they sacrifice a goat, and he goes to Salt Lake City and knocks on doors at 5 a.m. to teach atheism to people. Searches out the
Have you heard the
magical
good
Mormon
news?
underwear. Exactly. Have you heard of it? There's this guy named Charles Darwin. Um, the what's the guy's name?
Oh
It's
God,
not
let's
Bob
not get that
Larson.
started. Ugh.
Is it Bob Larson? There's a dude here in Phoenix that's a exorcist, the Christian guy that at the end of the show he exorcises all the demons from him. It's pretty wild. Are any of you familiar with John Safran?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, that
Everybody
Bob
go
as
look it
bad
up.
as I am with names, the name Saffron would stick in my head because there's a very long story, but there's a character in a play named Saffron that had a very large impact on me, so that would stick out to me if I'd ever heard it.
Sounds
Yeah,
like
look
good
up his,
fodder for a future video, I think.
Maybe.
the whole series of John Safran versus God is highly recommended. It's so good.
I mean, anything versus God sounds interesting to me.
Oh, he's Jewish, and he goes and um, visits with a KKK group, like Christian nationalists. It's wild.
Oh, interesting. It's how many episodes are there? I'm seeing a few different episodes, but it's hard to get solid info. Looks like 8
I think there were about 8. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's why it's a little weird because it started in 2004 and ended in 2007, and they had 8 episodes. So like one season, but spread across multiple years or something.
Oh, probably.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
interesting.
so good, all of them. And there'll be maybe 3 different segments within each show too. It never gets boring. Bob Larson, is that his name? He's this redheaded dude that's like he's one of the first like modern exorcists to really take it on the road kind of thing. But it shows the same once you watch stuff like Darren Brown, you're just like, wow, these are the same techniques that these guys are using.
Why does StreamYard never show me So yeah, Nara gifted a membership. Thank you, Nara, and congrats to
Ooh.
Logan Fisher, the winner of the gifted membership. Yeah,
Woohoo!
it's such a strange thing. StreamYard never shows me that. I get like, I see super chats, I see super stickers, I see everything except the gifted membership. But hey, you know, appreciate it anyway. As I have mentioned previously, as we get more members, YouTube will unlock more emoji slots, and then we can play with the happy fun emojis. We've already got quite an interesting selection. I will sample some of them. I'm just punching a few of them in at random here, and yeah, members get to play with those, and as new slots unlock, members get to vote on what becomes the next emoji.
Oh, good, it is Bob Larson. I saw something in the chat. That guy's a kook.
Mm-hmm.
Aha, Bob Larson, the the
He-
the man larceny was named for.
Really?
he's
No, that's probably not true.
Okay, I was about to say, I was like, really?
Be cooler if it did, though.
Like, I would love to be so notorious that my last name becomes the name of a crime. Like, that's awesome.
Well, I mean that theoretically could be arranged.
Like Ponzi scheme. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
man,
Marquis
what a
de
good
Sade.
idea that your last name became the name of the crime.
You know, the
No.
Marquis de Sade was put in jail because he
Oh yeah.
took a shit on a crucifix.
Really? Was that why he was
Wow.
jailed?
Oh, he made a hooker do it. That's what happened. Oh wow.
Oh man, so many questions about that.
Yeah, because I know his one of the books that he wrote has been like one of the longest banned books in history. Like no
Yeah.
one is ever willing to unban it, no matter how pro book they are.
120 Days of Sodom. He wrote it on a toilet paper roll, I guess,
Nice.
in prison.
So
The thing is,
for clarification, larceny came to English from the Old French in the 15th century. It goes all the way back past Latin and into ancient Greek, where the word was latreus.
Atreus.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely not named after that dude.
Bob Larson.
Yeah, yeah. Just because we
wow.
can't count on Pat Lowinger to show up and tell us these things. He does sometimes, but you never know. Eric, your last name is Scoundrels.
The name Scoundrels.
Excuse me.
Skeptics and Scoundrels.
Is Mr. Scoundrels in? I've had that happen working at so many random retail jobs. Like, I used to work at a home improvement store, sort of like Lowe's or Home Depot, and it was called Chase Pitkin. It was Chase-Pitkin, like clearly two guys, right? And every so often, a sales critter would wander in and be like, "Yes, is Mr. Pitkin in?" I'm like, "He died in like 1870, my guy." You know?
That's funny.
Yeah, it's well, you know, people are people. Oh shoot. I accidentally closed a thing. I'll open the other thing. I'm wondering very much about these thingies. What are these thingies?
Oh, yeah, so those are the copper plates of Korahor.
What'd you call me?
Cora Horror.
Korahor. Korahor is in the Book of Mormon. He's gonna be coming up pretty soon. He's like every atheist hero because he was an antichrist and he was straight up an atheist in the Book of Mormon.
Interesting.
So these are Mormon
Even
artifacts then in some vault somewhere.
yeah, these are actually facsimiles of the
Oh,
original plates. So these are facsimiles. The original plates you can only see with your spiritual eye.
Oh.
But it's interesting because maybe you can zoom in. There's one that kind of looks like an S in the middle, and then on both sides of that, um, it's the bottom row in the middle, the one that looks like the S. You can
Yeah.
zoom in. So next to it on each side are the same demons that are. Those are all the same ones that are up on here.
Uh-huh.
And then all the rest is Reformed Egyptian. So both Adamic and Reformed Egyptian.
It's always it's so trippy to me, the idea of the Reformed Egyptian, because like as we've mentioned on Aaron's show, like at the time nobody even understood original flavor Egyptian, which
Yeah, yeah.
I guess is why Joseph thought he would get away with it, but like it's not even remotely similar. So what the hell?
It's extra wild when it comes to. It's extra. Yeah, look, because if they're cursive or not. But it's funny. I don't know. I lost my train of thought on it.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
what I was gonna say with the Pearl of Great Price is that he translated those from actual funerary scrolls that were on papyri that he claimed were written by the hand of Abraham himself, but they're funerary texts from later period Egypt. But it was, the Rosetta Stone had been found, and there were people in Europe that were starting to translate Egyptian and figure it out. But overall, the world as a whole had no idea. It was just this language that was lost and no one knew. And they found actual written papers where he has taken each character and then says what each character means. And it's just his own imagination.
yeah, because I'd like to like I don't know, take that translation guide and then like see if things match up. But of course, we don't. The original golden plates aren't around anymore. Of course, conveniently.
Surprisingly
of
convenient.
Yeah.
course.
But the thing is, these papyri are around. And so it's really interesting because sometimes one Egyptian symbol will be a whole paragraph of information. And so I think that's where he gets the idea that with Reformed Egyptian, if each symbol actually can represent a paragraph, then you can see how it's like a form of shorthand where it can be condensed, where you can get a whole lot out of just a small amount. You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
wild.
That makes sense because a lot of things, there's a few codes where the first few bits, let's say letters, for example, just tell you which key you should be using, and then like the seventh or ninth letter is like an entire sentence in the context of what you've already calibrated your code to. And so it's like only every seventh letter actually conveys information, but it's like a whole sentence because of the preceding
Oh,
calibration.
I didn't know that's how it worked. That's cool.
Yeah, those are trippy codes. They almost never get used because they're they're difficult to unlock even if you do have the key. It's not like a one-time pad where things have a one-to-one correspondence. So yeah, for most uses, they're just too complicated, and they're not hard enough to break. So it's a very narrow band of uses for that kind of thing. It's mostly just hobbyists who use it these days.
Wow. Oh yeah,
So,
I have down at the bottom. You could see I had one of my toads, magical toads.
oh yeah,
Wh-
we're okay. I switch back over here.
So
Yeah, the
Joseph Smith,
toad.
Looks like a turtle.
one of the early accounts, they would say that Moroni, when when the angel first appeared to Joseph Smith, he was in the shape of a toad. That was actually Willard Chase, who I was talking about earlier, that gave that account that Joseph Smith's dad told him that the spirit was in the shape of a toad, and that's where Mark Hoffman, the Mormon forger, came up with his white salamander and the white salamander letter. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but he was a forger
Wow.
that he actually is in jail because they thought Salt Lake City was looking like Beirut because he was planting bombs and blowing people up
Well,
because
that's rude.
he had made all these forgeries and then was financially making profit from these Mormon forgeries and selling them to the LDS Church. And then the LDS Church was so embarrassed by them that they'd buy them and then hide them in their vaults. But they were just
Uh-huh.
like a bunch of made up shit.
That's trippy. Oh, speaking of, Aunt Jur just mentioned Much Murder Among the Mormons for the documentary on Hoffman. I heard a little bit
Yeah.
about that. I don't get to watch much stuff, but it did sound fascinating. But that reminds me of another fascinating thing. Shoot, what was the name of the movie? I want to say Red Dawn, but that's not it. Though it is also called Red Dawn, just different from the other one. But it was about a September 11th, 1857 ish.
Oh yeah, the Mountain Meadows Massacre.
That's the one. And yeah, I was just like, how the hell did something like that happen and it didn't even make it into the history books?
It happened in the southern Utah. That's Moroni Lucifer history that's what that stuff is, man. They were taking babies and like smashing them over the wagon wheels and stuff. Mormons.
Yeah, super biblical. Like, you see Mormons today and they're like so happy and resistant to chemical, like, oh no, I can't do alcohol, etc. And then you look back at, like, just 150 years ago, and they're going like the ancient Israelis on caravan babies and shit. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, are they still like that? You like to
They'd
think
had
not, but who knows?
Well, I look at my family history and stuff, and a lot, my grandpas and stuff were involved with the Indian wars and things, and growing up, you'd think it's all cowboys and Indians and stuff, but it really was, almost like genocide what they were doing to the Native Americans, just wiping them out.
Hmm. Although that's not all
Taking,
that different from what the mainstream part of the United States was doing.
yeah, no, definitely with them, just Jeffersonian America, Trail of Tears and all that stuff. Jefferson. Oh, James, who was it? Who's on the $20
Jackson
bill?
had the yeah,
Jacksonian, yeah, that's what I meant.
yeah. Although Jefferson did get it started. Alrighty. Well, bum bum bum. Oh shoot! I just closed my thing. Um. Well, I don't want
You
this
jib.
to run on too long before people have to start dropping and to make sure the stream stays watchable. But I wanted to ask you about a couple other things, like
Oh
what's
yeah.
going on with these critters?
So yeah, that's interesting because so there's a guy named Dan Vogel that's a Mormon historian, and he studies a lot of the magic, and he actually put this together. But in that golden parchment thing at the top, that's where those letters are right here. It's that top thing. But they're very unique symbols where no one's been able to trace it, where all these other symbols have been able to trace back to magical books. But this is just really, really strange because it's never been the original where this would have came from has never been found. And so what he actually did is he did find a source in a German magical guide down below where they didn't write it out, but they actually used the TypeScript that was available to modify and try to recreate that set of symbols. And so
Uh-huh.
it's just really weird because the original there up to the top have never been found. But with working with the Reformed Egyptian alphabet, I found every single one of those letters within the Reformed Egyptian. So it kind
Okay.
of goes back
Yeah.
to what you were talking about with these magical writings, like where were these sources coming from? Where did Joseph Smith, was he just making up letters? Did he have these magical books and it used different maybe pieces from that, I don't know. It's just interesting to think.
Yeah, it raises a lot of questions because we know, or at least we strongly believe, that his translating actual golden plates in a hat was probably a scam. But stuff like this indicates he did have a lot of occult knowledge of the time, like a surprising amount for a farm boy in the middle of rural New York.
Well, and there's accounts where they say that when he looked into the stone, it would appear like a parchment, and then he could see what was written. I mean, what's going to stop someone from physically putting a parchment into a hat? And
Yeah,
then you sit and read, and you're like, and then it came to pass that, you know, I
yeah.
mean, if you're really going to do he's a known magician. If you're going to do magic and tricks, there's
Pull.
one where said that they'd be digging and they'd find like a quail feather or something. You could just see him planting that stuff, like what kind of leap are you going to take to make it this mystical thing, When I'm not saying that the natural explanation is the explanation, but there has to be a natural explanation before you ever jump to those other extreme conclusions, There's a million other things that could have been naturally
Mm-hmm.
explained. So
Yeah,
I don't.
like a lot of people have mentioned that he spent some time at, there weren't public libraries in the area at the time, but there was a private library about a day's travel away from the Smith farm, and people did report seeing him there. He was never working on golden plates or anything like that, but maybe since it was a private library, maybe he was looking up occult references and like scribbling down notes of symbols and whatnot. I don't know.
Well, that's why this being in the family, this golden parchment, and there are other magical parchments included with this that makes it interesting is because they can trace the sources of where these books came from, and so they know that they must have had access to those books because they're appearing on these handwritten parchments, They know the sources of the material.
Yeah, and that's really trippy in a way. So what's the end goal with this project? Are you gonna end up like transcribing all of this stuff into books, or
Yeah, so I want to transcribe it and put it into a full book. Um, this was kind of more my mock-up, but where it'll have like the demon on one side and then like all the information about him on the other. about them on the other. The magical circle, the very first dire warning. The first of it is unless you're familiar with the Alinkus, then you shouldn't even go any further. The and essentially the Alinkus is the Greek word for the Socratic method. Alinkus methodology. So there's a big warning to LDS in it where it's like, beware, Latter-day Saints, reading this book can make you a progeny of perdition, which is one of the worst things that could ever happen, is to deny the Holy Ghost. But our three main pillars are: one, you must deny the Holy Ghost. That being said, Mormons believe that elevated emotion is the Holy Ghost. And so until you can see that elevated emotion is a horrible way to discern something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
There's a
where we
reason.
get.
There's a reason we write contracts and powers of attorney and other binding legal documents when we're calm and not when we're, in emotional distress. Exactly.
Yeah, or even better, hire an impartial professional to do it for us.
The second pillar is you must apostate. No church is true. That's what Joseph Smith taught, is no church is true. Don't join any of them.
That actually could be sound advice.
And then every member is their own prophet, seer, and revelator. Gazelam Ale.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, he may have contributed to the modern evangelical movement, where it doesn't matter what William Lane Craig or J. Warner Wallace says. I'm the true prophet, that kind of thing.
He definitely early on clamped down on people having their own revelation, because originally it was set up that everybody should have their own Seer Stone and be able to make their own revelation. But it just let a whole can of worms out. He had to come up with a revelation that said he was the only true prophet.
Of course. Add any words to this book and you shall be damned forever. Where have I heard that one before?
Yeah, that seems to come up a lot. Oh, okay. StreamYard tells me, heads up, there's a known issue with YouTube comments right now. You might not receive some comments in the studio. YouTube is working on it.
That's why I always keep both open. I have StreamYard open, and I got the actual YouTube stream open on mute on half my monitor.
No,
that's how I interact with people.
Aha.
Crime of passion defense. You cannot use the whole.
Yeah. And we got a super chat from Jester. Jester, thank you so much. So until you reach post-nut clarity,
which is a real thing. It's a very real thing. It's a guy thing. Only guys will understand it.
I don't know. I keep thinking, it came up a couple of days ago how Post and Kellogg they got the whole circumcision movement restarted in the United States because they were masturbation is mental illness and all that crap. And it just makes me think of Post's nut cereals.
Oh my god. So I'm actually planning on doing an episode on my channel on Post and Kellogg and like how they were trying to use cereal to control people's masturbation habits.
Whoa,
and Apostasy up in Canada from Stacey's Mom podcast, she sent me a box of Shreddies, which is a Canadian cereal. I'm down here in the US, so I'm going to be using that as a prop during the video. It's going to be fun times once I finally do it. Should do it soon. I should probably do it before the cereal gets stale and expires. So maybe within the next couple months.
Well, I mean, do you plan to actually eat it?
Yes, I'm going to sit there and eat it while I'm talking about it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Yeah. Well, then, before it's stale would probably be best.
It's still sealed. It's non-perishable, so maybe it'll last a few more months. But I got to get on that. Yeah, but soon.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Oh, that's frustrating that the YouTube thing is broken. Uh, rude. Rude, rude, rude. Oh well. Bum bum bum. Okay, well, let's see.
But yeah, the plan is to publish it as a book, and then I'd like to actually probably publish these individually as a card deck too, with all the information on the
Yeah.
back. So we'll have those two different formats for it. That's the plan, but I have to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, it could definitely take a minute. But if you can get it to work out, I think that'd definitely be the way to go. Because some people would want the whole book and like the full grimoire experience, and others they'd really like the cards, especially with them being fallacies. I mean, hell, I want one of them. That's just cool. But also you could do like a box set, both the book and the cards. But yeah, getting
And
it all worked out could definitely take a
it's
minute.
something that on a show like this, I'd really say it overtly that that's what's behind the demons, but it's more, if you read it and you're familiar with what those fallacies and biases are, it'd be like, oh, whoa. But it is kind of an Easter egg or a little kind of, I don't outright say in the book, outside of saying, oh, well, unless you use the Linkus method. So
Yeah.
Well, it's like if Armando
like
Cavo can make a book, you can.
frickin' right. But yeah, it's like, well, like you said, Easter eggs, right? People who like can figure it out. It gives them layers to figure out.
Did Amano Cabo actually make a book though? Like
Two.
the product was a book, but did he make it?
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. He was
That's
more
like asking, did the gospel authors write?
I can copy
I
and
mean-
paste multiple times in a row and make a book.
this is the anthology that I have edited and curated. Oh boy, yeah.
that
yeah,
is my
for sure.
argument with the Book of Mormon is that the more and more I read it's hard to, and as a collage artist, it's hard not to imagine it as like a type of collage in a way. People, like I had it wasn't an argument, but someone on the Facebook site that we're on was saying that he thinks it's a channeled book, that he channeled the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, there might be sections that, I don't see channeling as something where some type of alien comes down or something, but I can see people going into transit states and starting to come up with a story and a narrative and go with it, and are especially really talented people that can tell stories and things. But with all the Isaiah stuff, there's so many other things. It really, and multiple authors, the style of changing so much. It just seems more like a work of collage to me. But
I wonder to what extent it's true that every religion is just a mishmash of the religions that came before it. Because like Christianity is derived from Judaism. Judaism is
Right.
derived from the disparate, tribal pagan religions of
Yeah,
the surrounding areas.
the Canaanite polytheism.
Yeah, like it's just so derivative. It's just derivative upon derivative upon derivative. And,
the Greeks and the Egyptians, how
yeah,
much they borrowed.
I tried to trace it back once towards the end of high school with my father, and we found that like it came in like iterative waves. Like the monotheists were, of course, they arose out of the polytheists. They said, oh, this one god is better than the others. Like monopolytheists, mixed theists, I guess, were a thing. Like in ancient Greece, you could acknowledge all the gods were real, but you
But have the
specifically
origin.
served, say, Apollo or Artemis or something.
That's basically the Jewish God in a nutshell. It's that if you look through the Old Testament, the Jewish God very much speaks about the other gods as if they are real, and it's Yahweh that is the top dog, and you worship Yahweh, and all these other gods are not to be worshipped. Yeah, it was a pantheon, and there was a one God that was supposed to be at the top, and that's kind of where that came from. Then Christianity took over, and it's like, no, those other gods were fake. There's only one true God, and that's the only God that exists, and that's Yahweh or Jehovah or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of religions that are like that.
Haitian voodoo's that way, where there's a pantheon of gods, but each person will have their own personal deity that they relate to. So like for me, it was Bawa Gedi, which is like the lo
Hmm.
the Loa of death. But there's like there's the mermaid, Azili, that's a beautiful princess, and all these different characters. And then the Sainteria is cool. The reason I like Sainteria and Voodoo so much is that they had this religion that they weren't allowed um, to have or to worship. And so instead, they took the Catholic gods and then superimposed their own gods on them. And they're like, "Oh, it's so good to see you praying to Mary." And really, no, that's a Zealey. You don't know
Whoops.
who I'm really praying to.
Yeah, yeah. No, nobody
Mask your
knows.
gods.
That's the one that Yahweh specifically wanted her shrines demolished, if I recall correctly. That's pretty trippy. Well, we've got to start wrapping up, but before we go, I see Nara has been attacking in the chat a couple more gifted memberships. Congratulations to Fenton Mully and Caterpillar. I haven't seen Cata in chat in a while, but yeah,
Ooh.
that's very, very cool, and thank you again very much, Nara. Nara's always doing sneaky
Cool.
surprise stuff like that. He's very cool. Before we go, Gazelem, where can people find you?
Oh, you could type Gazelam Ale on Facebook, of course, but probably one of my most important things I like to tell people about is my Etsy site. It's Etsy shop, Order of Aman, Awman. So if you type in Order of Aman, or I think Mormon Tarot, I put out a tarot deck called the Triumphs Pips Parade Tarot. I have a bunch of fun little Mormon things like the your own Urim and Thummim made out of Urim and Thummim crystal, or Seer Stones, and my toads and the little Mormon magical kits and stuff. So go check out my Etsy site, and even if you don't buy anything, like give it a little heart and stuff. It helps me out.
Oh shoot, I can't put stuff in the chat that way. Ugh. Eric swiping the emojis. I see how it is.
Yoink.
Yeah.
That's how I'm making my living right now, is as an artist, and it's not working that great, but
I can appreciate that.
So you mentioned that you were planning on taking all that art, all those demons based on fallacies and such, and you're going to compile them into a book and try to sell it? Is that it?
yes. Yeah,
I'd buy one of those because those look pretty cool. Like I want to like really just examine each one of them and see them. Yeah.
And I think nowadays too, if it even comes down to where I have to just self-publish on Amazon or something, I know they have those things where people can just order a book, and then what they do is they just print it off on demand.
Yeah, they're
so
like
it's really
self-publish.
cool.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we'll check out the different avenues, but hopefully something will work out.
Yeah, lots of goodies. I've put everybody's, both yours, Gazelem, and Niddy and Eric's links in the live chat.
Oh, nice.
Which
Thank
I
you.
can't see in the StreamYard thing. But yeah, Niddy you can find at Niddy's channel, and the links are in the description too, if you're a future person and the live chat isn't convenient for you. And Eric, of course, is at Skeptics and Scoundrels. Just
Woohoo.
type out the "and" and lose the spaces. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. And yeah, okay. I think that pretty much covers it. Any final thoughts, anybody? Oh, I do have one more thing, really quick. Apparently, we have another new member. Welcome to memberships, Eric, and a gifted membership from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Congratulations, Daniel Mothersoul. Awesome.
Oh,
One of us.
Yeah. We're getting a big old cult going on here. Okay, now final
Yeah.
thoughts.
I mean, this is really
all-
fascinating stuff. It's cool, like, just to hear about all the ideas and demons that you've come up with, and now I've got a whole bunch of like religious lore to look into that I never thought existed. Like, I want to look more about the Lesser Book of Solomon and these demons with keys and, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, thanks, Niddy. Yeah, you'll probably go down a crazy rabbit hole now.
It gives me more ideas for content, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
awesome.
fascinating the layers and the derivations behind modern day beliefs and like what's all behind it and what led up to it. It's fascinating, and I think if more people knew about it, they'd be less inclined to believe these religions. So, yeah, I think what you're doing is pretty cool. I like it, and if you do publish a book, be sure to let me know because I'll buy a copy.
I will for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been enjoying your shows, so. But I'd like to thank you, Ember, for bringing this up and inviting me. That was so cool. I like doing this kind of stuff, but I don't get very many opportunities, so
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was interested when I found out you were doing a book. I didn't even know how deep it went until you started sending me stuff, and I'm like, oh, this just gets better and better. This is really cool. But yeah, and also for anybody who isn't aware, Gazelam and I do the Reading Joseph Smith show on Aaron Ra's channel on most Sundays. Occasionally stuff comes up, but most Sundays.
But
So
there's no better way to read the Book of Mormon than with a bunch of atheist Mormons.
yeah, I think I didn't even know Aaron was technically a former Mormon until it came up on the show. Like I
Yeah,
even
he's
had
been
him on my
baptized.
show, like doing, where did you start as a believer? And he just kind of skipped right over that. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's Aaron. He can do what he wants, Yeah.
Yep,
So
he's a
I think
Mormon.
I think I'm the only person who's not technically a former Mormon on the show. It's fun
But I'm
though.
always amazed how much you know about Mormonism. That's always surprises me.
Well, I
You've done
mean,
your homework a little bit.
a little bit. Driving around with a former Mormon who liked to complain about it helped a lot. Fun stuff. Alrighty. Well, I guess that's going to do it for this time. Of course, there's always so much more to say, but we don't want it to go on too long and have people get bored and start complaining and things. So do check out those links. Visit Gazelam. Keep an eye out because the stuff he's putting out and the stuff he's going to be putting out are very, very cool. And yeah, thanks everybody for stopping by. Thank you, Niddy. Thank you, Eric. It's always good to hang out with you guys, and I appreciate your additional insights, especially when it
Absolutely.
comes to stuff like this. It's just a great time. And thanks everybody in the chat for stopping by. We will catch you the next time we all make mischief. Have yourselves a wonderful evening.
Bye.